The Lake That Listens, Chapter 1. The arrival. The wind howled across the frozen expanse of Lake Kael, a vast, ice-covered body nestled in the shadow of the coast mountains in Prince Hollow, British Columbia. It was January 1972, and the air bit at any exposed skin, carrying the kind of cold that sank into your bones and stayed there. I, Nathan Carver, was the project lead for a small American research team from the University of Washington, sent north to assist with a Canadian geological survey. Our task was straightforward: map the bedrock beneath the lake, rumored to hold untapped mineral deposits. The locals spoke of Prince Hollow as a place where the earth kept its secrets, but I dismissed it as small-town folklore. Our team consisted of 6. Me, a geophysicist with a knack for keeping things organized; Dr. Margaret Voss, a paleontologist with a sharp mind and sharper tongue; Lucas Tate, our equipment technician, whose easy grin hid a nervous streak; Anna Caldwell, a young seismologist fresh from grad school; and 2 hired hands, Ben Walsh and Clara Dunn, both American contractors with experience in Arctic conditions. We'd been loaned to the Canadian government under a joint resource exploration initiative, a gesture of goodwill between neighbors. The camp was a cluster of prefabricated cabins on the lake's edge, surrounded by snow-laden pines and the endless white of the frozen surface. The first day was routine. We set up sonar arrays and ground-penetrating radar, dragging equipment across the ice under the pale glow of a winter sun that never climbed high. Lucas grumbled about the cold, his breath forming clouds as he calibrated the machines. "This place feels wrong," he said, half joking, "like the lake's watching us." Clara, bundled in a parka, laughed it off, but Anna paused, her eyes scanning the ice. "Sonar's picking up something odd," she said, pointing to the display. "A void, maybe a cave system, about 200 feet down." I leaned over her shoulder. The readings showed a sharp anomaly, a hollow space, too regular to be natural, beneath the lake bed. Margaret joined us, her glasses fogging slightly. "Could be a karst formation," she suggested, but her tone lacked conviction. We marked the spot for drilling, a small test bore to confirm the anomaly. That night, as we huddled in the mess cabin over instant coffee, Ben shared a story he'd heard from a local trapper. "They say this lake used to be a meeting place for the old Salish tribes, but they stopped coming centuries ago. Called it the water that listens." I brushed it off as superstition, but the words lingered, especially when I woke at 3 a.m. to a faint vibration under my cot, like the lake itself was humming. Chapter 2. The breach. By the 3rd day, we drilled through the ice and into the lake bed, a slow process with the portable rig we'd hauled from Seattle. The drill hit resistance at 180 feet, then broke through into empty space with a jolt that shook the platform. Water sprayed upward, black and frigid, before freezing in the air. Lucas cursed, shutting down the rig, while Anna checked the sonar. "The void's bigger than we thought," she said. "It's not just a cave. It's structured, like chambers." We lowered a camera on a cable, its grainy feed revealing smooth stone walls, not rough like natural rock but polished, etched with patterns that spiraled in dizzying loops. Margaret's eyes widened. "These are artificial," she whispered. "Prehistoric, but not human. Nothing like this exists in the archaeological record." The patterns glowed faintly, a pale green that pulsed in time with the hum I'd felt the night before. Ben and Clara rigged a wider access point, cutting through the ice to lower ourselves into the void. The descent was treacherous, the air growing colder and heavier as we dropped. At the bottom, we stood in a chamber the size of a cathedral, its walls lined with those same spiraling symbols. In the center, a circular platform rose from the floor, its surface smooth except for a single, deep groove that seemed to drink the light from our lanterns. Lucas ran his hand along the wall. "This stone's warm," he said, startled. "Should be freezing this deep." Anna set up a seismograph, its needle twitching erratically. "There's movement below us," she reported. Not tectonic, rhythmic, like a pulse. The words sent a chill through me, unrelated to the cold. That evening, back at camp, Margaret pored over the camera footage. These symbols resemble ones found in Greenland, from a dig in the 1930s, she said, showing us a faded journal article. The expedition vanished, and the site was buried under government orders. I wanted to dismiss it, but the hum was louder now, vibrating through the ice and into our cabins. Chapter 3. The Voices. The next morning, Clara reported hearing whispers in the night, faint and unintelligible, coming from the direction of the lake. Sounded like my name, she said, her usual bravado gone. Ben nodded, admitting he'd heard it too, though he'd chalked it up to wind. I hadn't slept well either, my dreams filled with endless spirals and a voice just beyond understanding that we returned to the chamber, this time with more equipment. Anna's seismograph went wild, registering vibrations that synced with the hum. Lucas noticed something new. The groove in the platform was wider, as if it had grown overnight. That's impossible, Margaret said, but she measured it, confirming the change. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, their green light casting shadows that seemed to move independently of our lanterns. As we worked, the whispers grew clearer, not just in our heads, but echoing softly through the chamber. Nathan, I heard, clear as day, though no one had spoken. Clara dropped her tools, her face pale. You heard that too? She asked. Before I could answer, the platform vibrated, a low thrum that made my teeth ache. Anna's equipment spiked, and she gasped. Something's moving, directly below us. We retreated to the surface, the whispers following us up the cable. That night, the camp's radio crackled with static, interspersed with syllables that sounded like a language but weren't. Margaret locked herself in her cabin, transcribing the symbols from memory. They're instructions, she muttered when I checked on her. Or a warning. Chapter 4. The discovery deepens against my better judgment. We planned a deeper exploration. Margaret insisted, her obsession growing. We borrowed a submersible camera from a Canadian research outpost, lowering it into the chamber's floor, where a narrow shaft descended further. The feed showed more chambers, each larger, their walls covered in carvings of humanoid figures, elongated, with featureless faces, kneeling before a vast, coiled shape. This is a temple, Margaret said, her voice trembling with excitement. A place of communion. Lucas refused to go back down, citing equipment malfunctions. The radar's acting up, he said. It keeps showing movement, but there's nothing there. Anna's seismograph confirmed it. Rhythmic pulses, growing stronger, as if something was stirring. Ben and Clara, despite their unease, volunteered to help widen the shaft for a manned descent. That afternoon, as we worked, a crack appeared in the ice above the chamber, spiderwebbing outward. The lake groaned, a deep, organic sound that wasn't just ice shifting. Clara's hand shook as she held the drill. This place doesn't want us here, she said. I couldn't argue. The air felt charged, like before a storm, but the sky was clear. Back at camp, Margaret showed us a sketch from the Greenland Journal, a spiral rising from a slit in the earth, identical to the carvings below. The 1930s team called it the sleeper, she said. They believed it was alive, waiting for a signal to rise. Ben scoffed, but his eyes darted to the lake. Chapter 5. The first loss. The next day, Lucas vanished. His cabin was empty, his gear untouched. We found footprints leading to the lake, stopping at the edge of the ice. Anna's sonar showed no body beneath, just the same void, now pulsing with faint light. Clara broke down, insisting the whispers had called him. I heard him last night, she sobbed. He was answering them. We searched the chamber, finding his flashlight near the platform, its lens cracked. The groove in the center had widened again, now a foot across, filled with a viscous, glowing liquid that smelled of salt and decay. Margaret took a sample, her hands trembling. This isn't natural, she said. It's organic, but not terrestrial. The hum was constant now, vibrating through the ice and our bones. Anna's equipment registered seismic activity across the region, centered on the lake. "It's like a heartbeat," she said, "and it's speeding up." That night, the radio broadcast a new message, not in static, but in clear, alien syllables. "Open the way." None of us slept. Chapter 6. The descent. We had no choice but to go deeper. Margaret led the charge, convinced the answers lay below. We rigged a pulley system, descending into the shaft beneath the platform. The air was thick, the walls slick with that same glowing liquid. At 300 feet, we reached a new chamber, its ceiling studded with crystalline structures that pulsed in sync with the hum. The carvings here were more vivid, figures transforming, their bodies stretching into spirals that merged with a central mass. "It's a record," Margaret said, "of a process, evolution or assimilation." Ben's flashlight flickered, and he swore he saw movement in the shadows. Tall, pale shapes that vanished when he turned. Anna's seismograph screamed, registering a massive surge below. "It's waking," she whispered. The liquid in the chamber began to rise, lapping at our boots. Clara screamed as it touched her, her skin blistering where it made contact. We pulled her back, but her eyes were glassy, her voice murmuring words that weren't English. As we ascended, the whispers grew into a chorus, chanting in our minds. I saw visions, cities beneath the earth, built of living stone, inhabited by beings that were neither human nor machine. They offered knowledge, but at a price I couldn't comprehend. Chapter 7. The betrayal. Back on the surface, Clara's condition worsened. Symbols appeared on her skin, glowing faintly, mirroring the chamber's carvings. She spoke in the alien tongue, her voice layered with others. Margaret, instead of helping, seemed fascinated. "She's communicating with it," she said, scribbling notes. "This is what the Greenland team missed." I confronted her, suspecting she knew more than she'd let on. She admitted to finding classified files during her university tenure, reports of similar sites across the Arctic, sealed after unexplained losses. "They called it the network," she said. "A system of nodes, built by something older than humanity, designed to awaken when disturbed." Ben, furious, accused her of withholding the truth. "You knew this could happen," he shouted. Margaret didn't deny it, her eyes gleaming with that same unnatural light we'd seen in Clara. "This is bigger than us," she said. "We're catalysts, not victims." That night, Clara disappeared, her footprints leading back to the lake. We found her jacket floating on a patch of melted ice, the water beneath glowing green. The hum was deafening now, shaking the camp. Chapter 8. The confrontation. We decided to destroy the site. Ben had explosives from the drilling supplies, enough to collapse the chamber. Margaret protested, her voice edged with desperation. "You'll doom us all," she warned. "The network will retaliate." But Anna's readings showed the pulses spreading, seismic waves rippling across British Columbia, that we descended one last time, planting charges along the chamber walls. Margaret followed, her movements erratic, her skin paling. "They chose me," she said, touching the crystals. "They've always chosen me." Her fingers bled, the liquid merging with the glowing pooled. As we set the timers, the shadows moved, tall, elongated figures, their eyes voids of light. They didn't attack, just watched, their presence pressing against our minds. Ben lit a flare, scattering them, but Margaret lunged, trying to disable the charges. Anna tackled her, and we dragged her up, her screams echoing with alien words. The explosion rocked the lake, ice cracking for miles. But as we surfaced, the hum didn't stop. It grew louder, the water glowing brighter. Chapter 9. The escape. The camp was in chaos. The ice split, cabins tilting into the water. We grabbed what supplies we could and fled in a snowmobile, heading for Prince Hollow, 20 miles away. The hum followed, vibrating through the ground, and the sky above glowed with faint green streaks, like an aurora gone wrong. That Anna's radio picked up distress calls from other sites, mines, research stations, reporting similar disturbances. "The network's active," she said, her voice hollow. Ben drove, his knuckles white, while I watched the lake recede, its surface churning with shapes too large to comprehend. In Prince Hollow, we found the town half abandoned, locals fleeing after tremors shook the region. The few who remained spoke of lights under the lake, voices in the night. We tried to warn them, but they looked at us like we were mad. Chapter 10. The legacy. We made it to Vancouver, then back to Seattle, but the world had changed. News reports blamed earthquakes, but I saw the truth in grainy footage. Glowing structures rising from Arctic waters, figures moving in the shadows. The network was awake, its nodes activating across the globe. Ben disappeared a year later, his body found in an Alaskan mine, covered in symbols. Anna quit academia, retreating to a cabin in Montana, where she sent me letters about hearing the hum in her dreams. I stayed in Seattle, collecting reports of new sites, Greenland, Siberia, the Pacific, all pulsing with that same green light. The government classified it, but whispers spread, cults forming around the nodes, people transforming, merging with something ancient. I carved wards from old Salish texts, hoping to hold them at bay. But every night, the hum returned, faint but persistent, calling my name. The deep ones, or whatever they were, hadn't won, not yet. But they didn't need to. They were patient, and we'd open the door. The lake still listens, and one day it will answer. The ice of Lake Kael had long since reclaimed the scars we left behind, sealing over the shattered remnants of our camp and the gaping wound where our drill had pierced the earth. It was 1978 now, 6 years since that brutal winter in Prince Hollow, British Columbia, when our small American research team unwittingly unleashed something ancient and incomprehensible beneath the frozen surface. The world had moved on in its usual, oblivious way. Watergate faded into memory, disco pulsed through urban nightclubs, and the Cold War simmered with its quiet threats. But for me, Nathan Carver, the geophysicist turned haunted chronicler, the events of 1972 were a wound that refused to heal, a pulse that lingered in my bones like the hum we'd felt under the lake. That I'd settled in a small apartment in Seattle, a city whose gray drizzle and bustling port offered some semblance of normalcy. The University of Washington had quietly reassigned me to desk work, citing field fatigue after my vague report on the Prince Hollow incident. The truth was buried under layers of classified documents, sealed by both American and Canadian authorities who preferred to call it a geological mishap. The official story was simple. An unexpected seismic event destroyed our equipment, forcing an evacuation. No mention of the glowing symbols, the voices, or the shapes that moved beneath the ice. No mention of Lucas, Clara, or Margaret, whose fates remained as opaque as the lake itself. Prince Hollow was abandoned by 1973, its residents scattering after the tremors that followed our explosion. The town's remnants, wooden shacks, a general store, a church with a crooked steeple, stood frozen in time, overtaken by snow and silence. The Canadian government cordoned off Lake Kael, citing unstable ice, but I heard rumors through back channels. Survey teams sent in 74 and 75, only to return with gaps in their memories and strange markings on their gear. One team vanished entirely, their helicopter found empty on a nearby ridge, its instruments fried. Ben Walsh, the contractor who'd helped me set the charges, didn't last long after we reached Vancouver. He'd been a steady hand during our escape, but the weight of what we'd seen broke him. By 1974, he was working odd jobs in Alaska, chasing rumors of similar sites in the permafrost. His letters to me were frantic, filled with sketches of spirals and warnings about the network spreading. In early 1975, I received word he'd been found in a derelict mine near Nome, his body covered in glowing green symbols, his eyes open and unseeing. The coroner ruled it hypothermia, but I knew better. The network had claimed him, just as it had Clara and Lucas. Anna Caldwell, our seismologist, retreated to a cabin in Montana, swearing off academia. Her letters arrived irregularly, scrawled in a shaky hand. "The hum's still here, Nathan," she wrote in one. "It's in the ground, under the trees. I see it in my dreams, spirals, cities, things that watch." She mentioned carving wards, symbols she'd copied from Salish texts we'd found in Prince Hollow's library. I tried to visit her once, in '76, but she wouldn't open the door. Through the window, I saw her walls covered in those same spirals, drawn in charcoal and blood.as for me. I became a collector of fragments, news clippings, whispered accounts, anything that hinted at the network's reach. The hum never left me, a faint vibration that surfaced in quiet moments, like a heartbeat just out of sync with my own. I kept a journal, not unlike the one Margaret had clutched in her final days, documenting every anomaly I could verify. It was my way of fighting back, of proving I hadn't imagined it all. But the more I uncovered, the less certain I became that fighting was even possible. The conclusion to our story wasn't a single moment, a tidy resolution where the hero triumphs and the monster is slain. It was a slow, creeping realization that spread over years, like ice forming on a still lake. The network, as Margaret had called it, wasn't just a collection of ancient chambers. It was alive, adaptive, and patient beyond human comprehension. Our actions in Prince Hollow had been a spark, igniting a chain reaction that rippled across the Arctic and beyond. We hadn't stopped it. We'd announced our presence to something that had been waiting eons for us to notice. In 1973, a year after our escape, I found the first clue in a Seattle library's archive, a 1920s report from a Canadian mining operation near Yellowknife. The crew had hit a chamber similar to ours, lined with warm stone and glowing symbols. They sealed it after two men walked into the depths and didn't return. The report was buried, labeled a hoax, but the sketches matched our findings exactly. I tracked down a retired miner from that crew, now in his 80s, living in a Vancouver nursing home. "The earth sang to us," he told me, his voice quavering. "Promised things, knowledge, strength. But it wanted something back." He died the next day, his room filled with the scent of salt and decay. By 1974, similar stories emerged. A drilling platform off Greenland reported anomalous vibrations, and a crew member who spoke in tongues before vanishing into the sea. A Soviet research station in Siberia was abandoned after scientists claimed the ice was breathing. Each incident was hushed up, blamed on equipment failure or human error, but I saw the pattern. The network was waking, node by node, its pulses growing stronger. I formed a loose alliance with others like me, survivors, researchers, even a former CIA operative named Daniel Holt who'd stumbled across a classified file on Arctic anomalies. We met in secret, exchanging notes in diners and motels, always moving to avoid detection. Holt showed me a grainy photo from a 1960s Alaskan dig, a black stone spire rising from the permafrost, etched with spirals. "They've known since the 40s, he said. "The Americans, the Canadians, the Soviets, they all found sites, sealed them, and prayed it was enough." Our group pieced together the network's nature. It wasn't just physical structures, but a system of consciousness, embedded in the Earth's crust, possibly older than life as we knew it. The carvings weren't art. They were code, a language that reshaped matter and mind. The liquid we'd found, the glowing green that burned Clara, was a medium, part organic, part machine, capable of rewriting biology. The figures we'd seen, those elongated shadows, were either its agents or its creations, remnants of a species that had merged with it long before humanity existed. In 1975, during the height of the energy crisis, reports surged. Oil rigs in the Beaufort Sea hit chambers, their crews reporting voices and lights. A mine in Nunavut collapsed after workers described living stone that moved under their tools. I traveled to one site, posing as a consultant. The chamber was sealed, but I felt the hum through the ground, stronger than ever. Locals spoke of dreams, cities of spiraling towers, beings that offered eternal life in exchange for surrender. Anna's letters grew more erratic. "They're not evil," she wrote in 76. "They're lonely. They want us to join them." I feared she was succumbing, like Margaret had. I sent her a package of wards, hoping they'd anchor her, but her next letter was a single sentence. "The lake is calling." She vanished that winter, her cabin found empty, the floor carved with symbols. BY 1977. The network's influence was undeniable. Cults sprang up in remote towns, worshipping the sleepers. Their members bore the same glowing marks Clara had, their eyes reflecting an inner light. I infiltrated one meeting in a derelict warehouse in Vancouver, posing as a drifter. They chanted in that alien tongue, their bodies swaying to an unseen pulse. Their leader, a woman with pale skin and elongated limbs, spoke of a convergence when the network would rise fully, reshaping the world. I left before they noticed me, but not before I saw her eyes, voids like the figures in the chamber. Holt warned me the government was watching. "They're not trying to stop it," he said. "They're studying it, hoping to harness it." He showed me a leaked memo from a joint U.S.-Canadian task force, dated 1972, the year of our incident. It mentioned Protocol Aegis, a plan to monitor the network without interfering, allowing controlled awakenings to study its technology. The memo referenced Prince Hollow, calling our explosion a partial containment failure. I confronted this reality in early 1978 when a black sedan pulled up outside my apartment. Two men in suits, claiming to be from the Department of Energy, offered me a deal: join their task force or face complications. I refused, citing my health, but they left a card with a single word: Aegis. That night, I burned my journal, scattering the ashes in Puget Sound. But the hum followed me, louder in my dreams, whispering promises of knowledge I didn't want. In June, I returned to Prince Hollow, unable to stay away. The town was a ruin, the lake a mirror of ice under a moonless sky. I stood at the shore, feeling the pulse beneath my feet. The ice cracked, revealing a faint green glow, and for a moment, I saw them, shapes moving below, vast and coiled, their surfaces pulsing with light. A voice, not unlike Anna's, spoke in my mind: "Join us, Nathan. The way is open." I carved a ward into the ice, a Salish symbol of protection, and fled. Back in Seattle, I fortified my apartment with similar carvings, but they only dulled the hum, never silenced it. The world was changing. Reports of glowing structures in the Arctic multiplied. Governments issued vague warnings about environmental anomalies, and people disappeared near known sites. The cults grew bolder, their members infiltrating cities, their eyes gleaming with that same light. In late 1978, Holt vanished. His safe house in Calgary burned to the ground. His last message to me was a single photograph: a spire rising from the ocean off Greenland, surrounded by kneeling figures. I knew then that the network was no longer dormant. It was adapting, learning from our resistance, reshaping itself to meet us on our terms. That I considered running. South America? Maybe, or somewhere the network hadn't reached. But where could you hide from something woven into the earth itself? Instead, I stayed, gathering survivors, teaching them the wards, sharing what little we knew. We were a ragtag resistance, armed with symbols and desperation, fighting a war no one else acknowledged. The hum grew stronger each year, a heartbeat echoing through the planet. By 1980, I heard rumors of new technologies, computers that ran on principles no one could explain, medical advances that healed by rewriting flesh. The network's influence was subtle, seeping into human progress like ink into water. Some called it evolution. I called it assimilation. On quiet nights, I stood on my balcony, staring north toward the Arctic. The hum was always there, a reminder of what we'd awakened. I saw Clara's face in my dreams, her skin glowing with symbols. Her voice joined with the chorus below. Anna, too, her words echoing. It's not evil. It's lonely. I wondered if they were still themselves, or if they'd become something else, part of the network's vast, spiraling consciousness. The conclusion wasn't victory or defeat. It was survival, a holding action against an inevitable tide. The network didn't need to conquer. It only needed to wait. We'd opened the door, and it was too late to close it. The lake still listened, and its voice was growing louder, calling us all to the deep.